Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by the voice that you just heard, Kyle Crooks of the Husker Radio Network. Kyle, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. I didn't know I'd have to hear my highlights when I wake up bright and early, but good to see you guys. Always good to be on with you guys. How you guys doing?
Good. Casey, isn't it funny? I think most people used to make fun of me all the time because I don't leave voicemails. I don't like to talk on the phone. And I'm like, you know what? I hate my voice. Like, I don't really love it. And so it's funny to hear you say, I could take or leave my own highlights. Because I think the perception is that we love to hear ourselves talk when in essence there probably isn't anything further from the truth.
Yeah, you know what's funny is so I listened back to all these games probably like 2 or 3 times, like coach's tape, right? So when I'm by myself, I'm okay with listening to it. But when there's other people in the room, or other people are listening, it's like, I could.
Wait, how does that go again?
Yeah, it's like I don't know if these 6 other people in this room need to be listening to my highlights right now, but it is what it is. So,
Kyle, I hate to break the illusion for you. There's a lot more than 6 people listening when you do.
Yeah, you know what? That's right. So I actually saw our numbers this week were actually the highest they've been all year. This past week against Houston Christian.
Yeah.
On the app alone, we had the most listeners we've had. Cincinnati, Akron. It was the biggest listenership we've had. Sometimes it's scary to think the amount of people that are out there listening, and you don't really tend to think about that when you're in the game.
I'm glad. So it's funny, just because I love you so much. It's like I love the fact now that you're kind of smiling and you're settling in and having fun, because I think the part that first what am I looking for? Drew me to you was the fact that I think you're good natured, right? Like the job is the job, but you kind of root for the people at the end of the day, especially if they're going to be your coworkers. So I just like the fact that, you got to host the Hall of Fame event, which I think had to be crazy. Like, how about that for a handful of months in, you get to MC the Hall of Fame banquet and get all the nostalgia. But just to see you smile, man, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, let's be honest. The last month or so has not been easy. It's not an easy transition to step into a legend's seat, literally sitting in Greg Sharpe's seat in his booth. So it's been really at times been tough, and the adjustment's been tough. And you knew it from sitting in the booth with me in Kansas City and in the Cincinnati game, and kind of seeing how tense and things can be, right? And it didn't help, guys, that we were, and Damon, we were 9 stories up. We were literally in the clouds. We were getting off planes, calling that game against Cincinnati. So that was, but and doing the Hall of Fame banquet, Nebraska Football Hall of Fame, and standing up in front of a room of legends, literal Nebraska football legends. And there's been a lot of moments where I say to myself, how did I get here? I said it to Troy Dannon, I think at one of the practices recently, probably it was during fall camp. I was just sort of watching, surveying, and looking at the logo on the helmet, and I said, Troy, I still can't really believe that I'm here. I don't know if that sounds good saying that to the AD. It's like, man, this is incredible. And I think I'll have one of those pinch me moments this Saturday.
He's cooler than a fan, though. You got to admit, for an athletic director, and you've been around. Hey, listen, I get where you come from, but man, TD's pretty cool, isn't he? How about whether he's doing recruiting visits or he's thinking outside the box about revenue streams, or he's hobnobbing at the fight with Coach Rule and the wives get together. Dan and Troy, he's a pretty forward-thinking guy, man. You think you get the sense we're in pretty good hands with leadership.
Yeah, and he's in lockstep with Coach Rule. I think it's unique, and I'm sure all the coaches as well, but specifically in what I'm around the most, I can just see how Matt and Troy interact. And I remember meeting in his office for my interview, and I could just see how competitive of a guy he is. He wants to win, and for this position, he wants the best possible person in this position. I remember, him texting me after the Akron game and saying, happy home opener after we just won 16 with like 7 exclamation points. He's a competitor. He's the perfect guy to have. And I know I'm biased, right? He's the perfect guy to have in this position at this point in time in college athletics with revenue sharing and NIL. And he just has such a high expectations for his coaches, but the expectations are just as high on himself and what he wants done for this program. But you're right. He's an awesome guy. He's easy to talk to. And sometimes you don't necessarily get that from that position.
Kyle, I'm kind of curious what you've thought about the growth of this team through the first 3 weeks, because you haven't had as much time to be around sort of some of these guys and be waiting for certain guys to pop or have, seen their names on recruit lists for however many years before they actually end up in Lincoln or whatever. So this is, I feel like you have a little bit maybe fresher perspective and aren't burdened by some of the pre-existing knowledge about some of these guys where, some like me and DB will be like, well, I think this guy's really good, but we haven't seen it yet. How have you seen the growth and where have you seen the most growth from Cincinnati through Houston Christian?
What's funny is, so I'm undefeated in 1-score games, right? I'm 1-0. I've seen nothing but touchdowns here. We have our drive summary, which is sponsored. I think I've read that 750 times. I say to myself, like, I'm probably not going to have to read this as much once we head into Big Ten play, but this is like, wow, we've read this every single time coming out of break. I think biggest areas in which, I've seen this team take a massive jump. I think offensive line for me is something where I thought would be pretty good. And I think is, for the most part, is kind of rung true. I think when they settle into, we still seen sort of that rotation a little bit at left tackle. I think we'll see that settle in. For me, Emmett Johnson, I think we don't talk about him enough, right, guys? I mean, he probably should have had his 3rd consecutive 100-yard game this past week if he didn't sit out the entire second half. And, when I studied tape last year, I saw him sort of that progression, right, of, not having lived it last year, but seeing how much and going back and watching all the games, how much he improved over the last 3 or 4 games of the year. And, he's the real deal. And, I've seen the progression too, just overall in that quarterback room of Dylan as a leader, as a true freshman quarterback where, he's heading into now, guys, his 18th start. I mean, he's a veteran, right? Like, he's only a true sophomore, but to me, he's a veteran of the game. And I've seen him just take a massive leap as a leader, as a person since when I first met him. And the way he's taken TJ Lateef under his wing, and to have your best player as your strongest leader, as your loudest voice, to me, that is just a difference maker. I think offensively, this team is, I think, better than maybe I thought coming in certain respects. I think Dane Keys made a massive, I don't know if you guys saw the video that they posted last night, but the way Dane Keys sort of took over the locker room, right? Yeah. And said that, hey, that last drive before the first half, it's not good enough. We're not playing to our standard, this, that, and the other. And to have a voice like that in Dane Key, who's played, a handful of years in the SEC, is a difference maker. I just think from a skill position spot, from the quarterback spot, leadership spot, they've taken a lot of jumps.
Casey, it's interesting. A couple of my buddies that I trust, my confidants, I tell them, they asked me about you, and I said, it's interesting. I've never really worked with a play-by-play guy that loves, like, you're into the game, personality traits, schemes, it's almost like my job. And it's fun because we can bounce football off each other. And the cool thing is like the team is unique, right? Like Ben has his thing, and you've never really worked with a guy that does what Ben does, or somebody that's creative and gets down on the mic like Jess does with the sideline stuff. What's that blend been like for? Was it different, or is it about what you thought when you would tell me, "Hey, I know I'm getting involved with a team. I just want to kind of get in where I fit in," because you have your own unique attributes, which are pretty cool. And then there's this Ben, Jess, Damon dynamic too that you kind of still lead. So, like, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think it's made my job a lot easier than what I'm used to it being, right? Like I sort of thought like, okay, I'm stepping into this well-oiled machine. And it turns out like, oh yeah, this is a well-oiled machine. Ben sitting to my right, and the way he knows this broadcast like the back of his hand, and he's
isn't he great? Hey, like
amazing. And now he finally knows that. So at home, to bring people behind the curtain, he can actually talk into my ear without going over the air. He didn't know that until we finished the Houston.
So that's new.
Game.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So we have a brand new booth. Greg Sharpe radio booth is, there's a lot of new bells and whistles. So it's going to make that process a little bit easier. And, I think the timing between me and you, Damon, has grown. And it's just a lot easier when I can look to my left and I know that you're seeing the game. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it here to embarrass you, but I truly believe like you're like a kind of like a football savant, like a football genius, and you see the game a lot different than anybody I've ever been around, and that helps. So like when I'm following the ball and I'm locked in through my binoculars, I know Damon's going to see the 5 or 6 things off the ball that I didn't, and then are going to actually provide context to what's going on. And then when I can go down to the sideline and have Jess, and I mean, she's the best reporter there is. Like she
is a human cheat code.
She knows exactly where to go, when to go, what to look at, what mannerism, what means what in terms of what the mannerisms of coaches. And like, I'll talk about Coach Eckler, and then she's already 3 steps ahead of like, all right, Kyle, send it down to me, because she knew that after John Hull kicked the ball out of bounds to go right to Coach Eckler and see what he looks like and his interactions. And it's like, I know I'm surrounded by people that just know their job, do it at an elite level. And that makes me pretty comfortable in what I do, because, there's a lot going on for me on a game day, but I know I have so much stuff covered around me that makes my job a lot easier.